Hello and welcome, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and thank you for joining. Hi, Michael. How's it going?
Hello, good to see you all.
Good to
Been
see
a
you.
while, right?
Yes,
So it's
yeah.
it's really cool to see everyone again, and
We had
really
a
happy to pick
short,
it up again.
exactly. We had a short break the past week or two, even I think.
True, yeah.
Yeah, two. But now we're back, and
Yeah,
looking forward to discover Neo4j AuraDB with fun data sets.
yeah,
I hope you had a good weekend, everybody. I hope you are well relaxed for the week and have lots of motivation for another week of work.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
That's true. And it was a really good weekend. So here it was really warm outside,
Hmm.
so we went bike riding and were outside, and I went to visit my dad, and we watched actually the ESC on a big screen on a big canvas. So we pulled out a projector, and I sat down with my girls, and we watched the whole session on Saturday, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
At
I
least
did
we had a
watch
lot
it
of
as
fun.
well. Yeah, it is fun. It is fun. I watch it as well. We have this. It's almost a tradition now. I think where we. Because my friends are kind of like distributed across Germany, so we started this a couple of years ago when we said, okay, let's meet in Discord and just watch it and discuss as if we were in the same place.
Cool.
And so we did that on Saturday as well. So a couple of friends, and we watched it and had a good time. So that was fun.
Cool view session.
Yeah.
Although Germany didn't do so well, which I don't
No,
understand actually, because the song was actually not bad.
it wasn't. I
So
mean, it
it's
wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't. It didn't deserve to be last place. Yeah, that's for
no,
sure.
definitely
I
not.
don't. I
Definitely
don't
not.
know.
Yeah.
But well,
Uh, but I guess also lots of the jury votes feel more like political than like actually artistic. So
yeah,
it's kind of like people passing each other or countries passing each other's the votes, and actually we should be able to see this in the data as well. I think
yeah,
so. We can have a look at that. Yeah, so we thought Alex and I thought perhaps that's a cool, fun data set to look at because it's very current and
hmm,
very relevant and really impressive how the public then actually gave all the votes to Ukraine.
yeah. That
So
was super cool
that was
to
really good.
see.
Yeah,
Okay, before we
cool.
before we dive in, before we do that, a quick overview. What's the plan for today? Uh, but you probably, if you joined us a couple of times before, then you know what it is all about. But I'll just quickly repeat for all the people that have not taken part in this session. So, but yes, actually, before we do that, Graph Connect is taking place in a couple of weeks now. So
Yeah,
from
it's
6th
not
of June
it's
to 8th of June. So
not
it's
even 4 weeks
basically
more anymore.
4 weeks,
Yeah,
yeah.
so not
And
even, right?
not
So
even,
it's yeah.
yeah. So
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
it's it's coming soon. So if you have interest in joining that, if you want to be meet the community, have listen at interesting sessions from the graph world, and talk to Neo4j folks, then drop by. Um, just go to graphconnect.com for a ticket and for more information. So definitely hoping to see you all there. If you can make it, that would be definitely most fun.
Yep. And we'll be there and we'll have Dev Zone and lots of fun activities. And it's definitely worthwhile if you can make it to come and join us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. All right. So what's the plan for today? Hands on with AuraDB free. So the plan is we will do a quick recap of what Neo4j AuraDB free is. I'll do that in a second. We pick a data set. We think about the questions we ask from that data set. What kind of things we would like to explore, determine a model, and load and query that into the graph. If you are watching this now and think, hey, I have a cool data set I never really explored, I never really looked into from a graph perspective, and you want to share this with us, we can obviously take your data set, and it would be cool to have yours. So if you have ideas, suggestions, let us know. Discord, Twitter, community forums, email, wherever really. Let us know, and we can try to do this with your data. What is Neo4j AuraDB free? That's a free version of Neo4j AuraDB, which is our graph database as a cloud offering in the cloud, obviously. It's basically just a small limitation in terms of size. So you get 50,000 nodes and 175,000 relationships, but the rest is very much the same than you get in all the other Aura instances, or what you maybe have used before is a sandbox, which had the limitation of a couple of days, and then it was deleted again, and you had to start again. But with AuraDB free, it's the data stays with you as long as you like it, and it's not going to be shut down. You have access to Neo4j Bloom in browser, so you can obviously use it to query your data and to visualize your data. So that's very powerful in Bloom, and we'll see that. Maybe not Bloom, but definitely browser. We'll see that today.
Yeah, Bloom as well. So
and Bloom as well.
Look at both. Yeah.
So we see both. It's free forever, like I said, and a link to the page where you can register and where you can set up your AuraDB free instance. I will post in chat in a second. So yeah, we hinted a little bit at this week's topic, Eurovision Song Contest. I don't know how many people did watch it on the weekend. If this is lots of interest to people outside of Europe, but here in Europe, this is kind of like this yearly thing where artists from every country basically in I think it's EU plus extension, so including
Israel and
Israel,
Australia.
Australia is exactly so. It's
for
like
whatever
European,
reason.
European continent. All countries in the European continent, they can take part. I think it's 40 countries, and they can submit a song, and then the top 25, I think, after semifinals. Yeah. They go into a final show, and that final show was on Saturday, where then everybody gets to vote. So every citizen of these 40 countries, plus a jury from each country, and they vote on the best song, and then the best song is obviously the winner of this Eurovision Song Contest. And it's usually a good show, a nice spectacle, and good entertainment. It's
rarely
what they're
making fun of it as
exactly,
well, right?
It's an entertainment thing. I think it's a show, and it's fun. It's less artistic. I mean, it's obviously artistic, but it's not maybe as high. Depends on what your music taste is like.
Preferences are
exactly. So,
but every country that hosts it usually puts up quite a impressive show for the evening, and
exactly.
Also, at least on Saturday, they had really nice, they had pictures of all over Italy, basically as intro to each song, which was really nice, with a drone flying around and capturing all these pictures with the artists overlaid, which was nice. And actually, I was surprised. They said sometime in the show that there are like 200 million people voted also, which sounds really like a lot, right? So the European Union has like 340 million people or so. But perhaps it's just the total count of votes that were passed, because people could vote up to 20 times, which I found kind of a little bit weird. But it seems to be quite popular, at least for the fun of it. And
exactly.
One thing, at least in German, that's always super between annoying and good to make fun of, is kind of the commentator. Really ridiculous old man commenting on that. But then I also heard some of the British commentary, and it was as bad as the German. So
it's entertaining. I think it's all an entertainment. Yeah.
Exactly. And and actually, I saw on Sunday, I think, Anders Sandell, who is a Swedish data scientist, post these tweets, which basically have a graph version of the votes, and that made me think, oh, perhaps you can use this on Monday for the Discover AuraDB free session. So you can see these tweets that he put up, basically from country to country for the 2022 contest. How many votes were there passed from one country to another, limiting it to the 8, 10, and 12. So they have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 8, and then 10 and 12 to have a little bit more weight for the 10 votes in total.
Yep.
And so these are like the majority votes that have like biggest impact as such. And this was the jury votes, and then which is pretty distributed. So the UK got a lot of jury votes, which I personally actually didn't understand, so I didn't find the song so great, to be honest. Or the voice. So I really like the Polish singer. So the River one, that was really
Yeah,
good.
the Polish one was good. I like the Polish one.
So he had really like a powerful voice. But actually, this year I have to say there were not so many like really bad performances. They were all quite good actually. So I have to say. And then he published also like how they distribute along an axis. And then he also published the public votes, which were like the people basically voting from their websites and phone and apps and so on. And here you see that Ukraine got like massive support from all over Europe and such.
Yeah.
So I thought, why not get the data and get it into Neo4j, so we can talk a little bit of how to get the data, what to do to get the data in, and then we can basically try to visualize it and query it as well. And then we can also discuss data models a little bit. For my experiments early today, I just opted for this really simple data model, but we perhaps can also discuss a more involved data model that has actually the artists and the songs and the other things as well, which I haven't prepared, but perhaps you can play around with that. Cool. So if you get started, the first thing that we need is, of course, the database. So we can go to Neo4j AuraDB and basically create a new database. We can do new instance, and I already did this. So you can select AuraDB free and then put in a name for the database and the region. So I chose Belgium and like ESC for the name. And then you basically click create instance, and then it basically tells you the password, and you have to say, I stored the password, and all is good, basically. And then it will go off for 2-3 minutes and create the database behind the scenes, spinning up the Kubernetes pod, and then it's available for you.
Yep.
Cool. And I already have mine running here, and it looks like this. Basically, it shows you Neo4j version, where it runs, what's in there, and it gets you also connection URL. It's important to save the password because otherwise you won't be able to access it easily.
Yeah, and it comes up a couple of times if there is a default username, password, or something, some such login for Neo4j AuraDB or any other service. We never do standard username, password. We always provide you with username is probably always Neo4j, but password will be randomly generated. Yeah. So if you lose that, there's a way to recover it. But if it's an AuraDB free instance and you just started and you realized you just have lost your password, just dump it, delete it, and start a new one and save the password.
You can just click here on delete and then delete.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. And so if my database is running, we can actually go to Neo4j browser, which is also called query here in this UI, which looks like this. So it's kind of the empty database. So currently there's no data in here, so it's empty. So this is kind of our database instance that you want to use. So then I went Googling for Eurovision Song Contest data. So the first thing that you find is this one, which is basically the scores from 1975 till 2019. They also have a really nice graph visualization already on the data here.
Yeah.
And it's Creative Commons licensed. And if you look at the actual data here, it has basically a year. Then was it the semifinal or the final? Was it kind of, this is like a key that combines year and the version. Then is this row jury votes or televoting votes? So televoting only started like 5 years ago or something like that. So before that, it was only jury votes. And then from which country to which country, and how many votes have been given. And then for the same country, so a country can't vote for themselves, so it's always 0, this kind of self-reference one here. And sometimes there's a duplicate. I think there's only one or a few duplicates in the data basically as well. So this is what you find when you Google for Eurovision Song Contest text data. So I kind of just took this data set, exported as CSV, and then put it on GitHub. So if you want to join us, we can actually look at, where's my GitHub repository? There. If you go to Discover Aura Free, I put in the data folder an ESC folder, which basically has this large data set, and then the small ones for last year and this year. In 2020, there was none because it was cancelled because of COVID, as such, right? So, okay, that gave us the data up until 2019, right? So, but I also wanted to have the 2021 and 2022 data. So that was not so easy. So I couldn't find anything on Google, only like aggregated data, which gives you like this kind of level. So actually it already started in 1956, but I don't have the data available easily. So that's something that we could perhaps look at later. But all these aggregated data points go.
I mean,
yeah, for our purposes, it's good enough. Right?
Yeah.
But you see, there's a lot of basically stuff in here, and so you get fun data sets like these, but these are only aggregated ones, right? So you don't get the individual ones. But here's more information on the songs and the artists and so on. So if you wanted to pull in like songs and artists, that's something that we could use basically here as well. Okay, so the next thing that I did is I looked at the German page, hoping that there's like some JSON file backing the page, but unfortunately it's all auto-generated HTML. So we could do HTML scraping on these. So that would be one option where you basically say you have these kind of years. For each year, you have all the countries, and then you can say how many points did a country get in this year from another country, basically. So this is Romania got that many jury points and that many public points, right? So, but I was not in the mood for HTML scraping here. So I continued to look. So the German pages, we don't need them, basically. So I continue to look, and there is this EurovisionWorld.com that has the, it's kind of the official page for the data, I think. And that has like these kind of graph visualizations here, and also tables and all the details. So so basically that kind of told me, okay, if they have the breakdown here, they also need to have the data, and because you can easily click between the different ones and the different countries, I thought, okay, then it should also be able to what is this? Yeah. It should also be possible to get the data. Unfortunately, if you look at the network tab here, it fetches this 140.js. Don't ask me where the numbers come from. It's probably the 14th, and they do like 10 increments, so to have some space in between or whatever. Anyway, and in this JavaScript file, there is information about like high-level information, like the year and where it happened, and so on. Then it shows you the songs, basically like the country, the artist, the song, and then some flag, which doesn't, I don't know, it's all true, basically. So that's kind of the song data that we could get from here. And then there is the voting table main, which is the aggregated view, this one here. And what we're interested in is these kind of voting point arrays here, right? So you have like source country, target country. I think this is the total, the jury votes and the public votes, basically, as such. So we can basically just copy this line of JavaScript array from here and use that in our import. So that's what I originally did this morning. Basically, I just took so copied out all the JavaScript bits here, like the songs, the countries, and the voting points, and then I basically just created a gigantic Zephyr statement so that takes this two-dimensional array with all the stuff and turns this into an into a list, and then returns it, right? So actually, I originally immediately created a graph, but then I thought it's nicer to have this also available as CSV. So I just basically returned these from Neo4j and saved the CSV file where I just returned the source from country to country, the total, the jury votes, and the public votes, basically, right? So if you run this, just to show you what this would look like, because sometimes it's easier to do something like this. I could have also pulled up Python or JavaScript or whatever, but I had Neo4j already open, so it was basically a no-brainer. So I basically just ran this, which gives me the CSV, and then I can just export this as CSV, and then I have it here. So it's pretty simple. If you want to turn some data into CSV, then I can also use Neo4j inside for that, which is a nice trick if you have it already open. So that's what I did to actually generate the two CSV files here, the 2021 and 2022 files. And then I did the same for the countries. So there's a countries file as well, which has basically just the short code and the name of the country as such. Okay. Because in the new data, there's only the short code used, but in this large file that I showed you from Kaggle, they have the full name of the country. So that's why I needed both.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Cool. And then basically that's all we need to get started with getting the data inputted into Neo4j. Right. So we have like the CSV files for the years and for the countries, and then we can actually get started getting it in. Right. So this is a really simple data model. It's almost not worthwhile drawing it. If we want to do it, then we could say this is like our ESC data.
Yeah.
But I draw it anyway because then we can discuss also the more complex data model later on as well. So what I did is I added a year to the relationship type, so it's easier to discern it by relationship type and easy to filter for that. So you can also put it into a property on a relationship, but I felt that was kind of more straightforward, and I could kind of use that directly. But it's optional. And then basically adding properties here for total, jury, and public. And the country has properties of code and name. Right. So that's kind of our minimal model that we can use.
Okay. Right. We could have done something like for each contest there's a node for the year. So like
exactly. So what we could have done is basically to have a more complex model. So I would say let's input this model in now and play around a little bit with it, and then we can come back and see if you can also model the more complex model and get this perhaps also imported as well.
No, makes sense.
Right. Cool. So, by the way, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to share questions, and we are happy to explore and explain more in detail if you're interested as well. Just in case.
Yep. I'll have a look.
Yeah, there are a bunch of questions. There's one question about using AuraDB frame databases for each of my microservices. Yes, that's possible, but there's a limit of only having one AuraDB free database. So you can basically use the one database for the different microservices, or you can spin up more AuraDB Pro databases than for the other microservices as such. And another question. And Docker. Okay, cool. So this is kind of the basic data set, and importing the data looks like this. I also put the import script online, so if you want to follow this, you can actually follow along. So the first one is actually just loading the countries. So the URL here is just the GitHub URL of the file. What's important to note is if you have a file on GitHub, then this URL doesn't help you because it's just an HTML page, right? Because it has like filtering and so on, and sorting. So you can sort it, I think, as well. Or can you sort it? No, but filtered. And so this is just the HTML page. You have to grab the raw URL to import it. So either you click on the raw, or you right click, copy the name. So this is the one that you want to use on with Neo4j. So for the countries, what we do is basically say load CSV with headers from this our GitHub URL and return this as row. And if we look at this, we can actually see that each row is turned into a JSON object or map, whatever you call it, which has the two fields for each row with a key code and name repeated for each of them. So they're much easier to handle than the raw CSV data. If you leave off with headers, then you get basically a multi-element list for each row, right? So one for the header and then one for each row here as such. Right. But we want to have headers. And then what we want to do is basically for each country, we want to merge the country on its code and set the name as an additional attribute. Why do we use merge? Merge is something like a get or create or an idempotent operation. So you can run it, or like an upsert, you can run it time and again, and it will not create new data if the data is already there. So if this country already exists, it will not create a new country, but just return this. So you can run this script multiple times without adding more data to your database. So it's not like an additive, but it's more like an idempotent operation. So if I run this, it says added 12 labels, created 52 labels, 52 nodes, 104 properties, so times 2, right? One code, one name. And now if you look at this, we can click here on the sidebar and see already our countries, and you can bounce them around and have some fun with them. Which is not so easy later because then they have all relationships and are really tied together. So if you want
they're
to
connected.
bouncing, then do it now, right? So that's a fun game part of that. And what you can do is you can actually select what you want to show. So for us, I think it's okay that it shows name by default. And you could change the colors for countries, so I can also make them yellow or green or whatever, right?
Yep.
So that's really nice. And this gives us the countries, but they're still not connected. So if I try to double click here or expand them, there are no relationships yet, right? So it's all lonely nodes in our graph, which are really
very sad,
not happy. Exactly, they're really sad. So, and that's why we're adding relationships now. So, and it's very similar to what we just did with the countries. Let's look at this like step by step. So again, we get our data from the CSV. So if I just return row limit 20 here, then we see that each row is turned into an from to, which is the two country codes, and then the votes, the public votes, the jury votes, and the total, which is the sum of both. Such. Right? And we use this now to find our start and end node based on their code, and then create a relationship and set these properties on the relationship. So if we want to do this, so what I also did is I filtered out the ones that have 0 votes, because I mean we could keep them in, but we don't really need them because that means there is no relationship between them if they gave them 0 votes. So it's kind of up to you if you want to keep them or not. Sometimes you want to see them, but then you can also just say where no relationship exists between the two, that's where the 0 votes were, right? So I just filtered them out here, but that's up to you if you want to do this. And something to note is in the CSV, all these cells are strings. So you see that like the 7 is in double quotes here and the 0 as well. We need to turn them into an integer to use them. So we can only compare them greater than 0 if it's an integer. Right? Okay, and then in the next step, we find our two countries. So I wrote merge here, but we can actually, because we already created the countries, you can also turn this into match, so which just finds the countries, basically. And then finds our country for from and for to. And if I just do this, then it would say return from to, comma row, limit 5. So we would see it would find this country, and this is for our row, right? So you see basically see these countries aligned with the codes from the row, right? So okay, and this works. And then between those countries, we create the new relationship. So I said I have something like votes. I said voted, right? But it's actually votes. Let me fix this. Votes, and then I set on the relationship the total, which is again to integer, the jury, and the public data as such. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So this onCreate set would only do the setting of the properties if the relationship didn't exist. If I remove this, it would at every run set these properties. But if I set this, then it only does it on the first time. And the next time the relationships, as the relationships are already there, they won't be updated. So I can run this once, and it says created 39 relationships, which is kind of the 40 countries basically voting for other countries, and 117 properties. And yeah, so and if I run this again, it just says there's no changes because all the data is already in the graph, so we don't have more than this here. Right. So, and now we see basically all these votes and all the data in here. So if I just return, if I return all the data in the graph, I would see this. And I realized that I made a mistake when generating the CSV because only the Ukraine data is in here. Okay, so that means because I wanted to, I messed up the CSV before because I kind of took the 2021 votes for the 2022 ones. Okay, so not a big deal. As I said, you can always update the CSV. So as I said before, what you can do is basically go to our data set here, which has all the nice votes. And let's see, I just need to make sure that this is the right one. Or we can copy it again, actually. So what we do is, so you can actually follow what I've done. So the 140 is the 2021, and we just grab the voting points here. This one. Just need to go all the way up down here. And as points. So these are our, oops. I want to go here. These are our points, and then we just split them up and use them. So I can either regenerate the CSV, or I can basically just use this data to set the other properties. And this is unwind points as row. So perhaps to explain this bit is basically we take this two-dimensional array as points, and then we turn this array into a row. So basically the outer array has all the individual votes, and we have basically get one row for each of these,
the three values here. Yeah.
And this is our row value, and then we get like the different parts as well. And because these are already integers in the JSON or JavaScript, we don't need to convert them such. So, okay, now we have enough data in here, right? So now we can actually look at the whole data and see that it's very densely connected, right? So you see like this is the whole data. That's kind of everyone voting for everyone. And actually I've changed the relationship representation here to show the total as an instead of the type. So by default you can say type, then it would say votes, but you can also just show the property 24 here as a number as well. So this is all of them, and we probably want to not see all of them, but we can basically say where, let's say, if you only want to have the high, like Anders did on Twitter, where r dot total is greater than 15 or something like that, or 14, then we return them as such, or greater. If you want to get the public ones, then greater than equal than to 12. Then you see basically the all the public votes going to Ukraine, and all the jury votes going to the United Kingdom. Such, right? So you see like a lot of the jury votes going to the United Kingdom. Quite a lot also went to Sweden actually,
Yep.
right? And to Italy and Spain. So Spain was a long time on top as well, and it's on the third place as well. And I think did Italy? No, not Italy. Greece also got quite a number as well. Right?
Yeah.
So you see this already
Yeah.
in the graph data, basically that it's you see these kind of patterns emerging as such, right? And so we got our data in, and now we can load the same data with for the other years as well. Just looking at the time, the 2021 is the same as what we just did. I just want to show you how I imported the 1975 to 2019, which looks a little bit different because the format of the file is a little bit different,
Okay.
right? So if you remember, the file had like one entry each for the jury votes and the public votes. So there are like two rows for each pair of
Okay.
countries, right? So
Yeah.
there's like the jury vote and then the public vote as well.
Okay.
So we have to aggregate them basically on a single line and basically get the jury votes and the public votes together on one line as such. So what I did here is basically actually do this, right? So when I import this data, I filter out the ones that are duplicate, where the duplicate row is set. So I don't want to have them. I only want to have the finals. So the round is final. And I filter out the country voting for themselves because that's something that I'm not interested in because it's not allowed anyway, right? And then, why is this actually doing changes too much? It's not complaining anymore. So, and then we aggregated on year, country, so from and to country. And then for each year and the two countries, we say when this row has a jury vote, then we get like the jury thing in this column.
Okay.
And when this row has a public vote, televote, that's why the T, then it goes into the public column, right? So that's basically just us picking the value and putting it either in this column or in this column. It's like Cinderella and the alphabet, kind of putting stuff into this or that column.
Yeah.
And then I just say here where when public and jury is greater than 0, then we basically find the countries and then create relationships as such. So if I don't create a relationship, just return this. So let's return year from country to country, jury and public, limit 20. So it fetches the big CSV and then you see this is the year from country to country, jury and public. So we kind of merged the two rows together into one if there were two. If there was only one row, then it would basically just, for all the years when there was no public vote, then it has just 0 in the public row instead. And so we take this data and then basically create the relationships. And because we want to have these relationships with the year in the name, we need to use an epoch procedure because that's a kind of dynamic thing.
Yeah.
But it's basically the same from and to, and then basically saying this is my relationship type contains the year, and then we just set these values here, jury, public, and the sum of both is the total, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and if I do this, then it adds, oops.
0.
Oh, because here it should say name and not code. Right, so now it has added 12,000 relationships, and you see all these vote relationships here now.
Cool.
Right? So all the data is in there. So you can also choose to not put it on the relationship type. It's also fine. It just depends what you want to do with the data, and then from that perspective,
yeah.
That's what you
but again, I mean, this makes sense also, and by being able to filter by relationship type, you basically get the same result in the way by visualizing it. You can just click on 1991 and then you get the 1991 results.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of then, for instance, if I want to say the year when I was born, 75, right? So it's 47 years ago, like forever. These were like the votes. If you remove the limit here, these were like all the votes cast basically, and you can just also show the totals So we see these were like all the votes cast in my birth here. Probably Ireland won or something. I don't know. But actually, that's something that we can query. Right? So before we go to Bloom, we can actually query kind of who got the most votes, basically as such.
Yeah,
right? So we
that would
can
be.
actually say the source country or the from country and the to country. The from country is probably not so important right now. But if you want to say what's kind of the sum per to country, right? So we just say the two countries' name, and then basically just sum up the total votes, and then order by total descending gives us basically for 1975 who won by total votes. We can also output basically the jury and the public. But as we just learned, the public votes are not around, so this should be 0 actually. That's public.
I think the jury is too young. I think they.
Yeah, the public one is too young. Yeah.
Or the public one? No, I thought.
Yeah, the jury was always there, and public votes have only been around since like for the last whatever X years.
Okay.
They said
I thought.
so as
I
well.
thought it's the other way around.
No, it was actually. Yeah, I also thought that it was the other way around, but it somehow, for whatever reason,
Okay.
it was jury votes before. So you see here the UK won 1975, and then Italy, and then France, and so on. Right. So you can do this. This direction. In the other direction, so if you actually return from the dot name, then it should actually be the same number, right? So because every country has the same number of votes, and if you didn't make a mistake, it's almost the same. It could be because when importing the data, let me just look at this again. At the import, actually change the match to merge because complaint. Could be that a bunch of countries were missing that or changed names or something like that. So let's see. Oh no, that's not the number. That's the total, right? So it can't be the same because someone has to. Or actually, the from votes should be the same, right? Every country should have
every country has the same numbers of.
But somehow it doesn't fit, right? So some have 104, some have. That's interesting. So you probably need to look at the data. It's also a really old one, so perhaps if you look at the
exactly
like 1999 or something like that. Oh, here it's better. So data quality, it's probably like just a data quality issue. Right? So there seems to be some votes missing.
Some numbers, okay. Yeah.
So some irregularities somehow.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we can compute basically the final result list as well for our representation. If you look at the data in Bloom, we can so Neo4j Bloom, you can just open it from Neo4j Aura by clicking on Explore, and then it asks you for the username and password again, which I just added, and then you can start using the data as such, right? So you can say country to country and before it's 2022, and so this looks all kind of like the same. But what we can do here is actually in Bloom we can actually add rule-based styling where we say the total becomes a size representation, and then we can actually style the width of the relationships based on the total of votes that the country got. Right.
So we see
you
a little bit better.
Actually,
who got...
not really better because it's still a lot of overlapping data here. But what we can actually do is there's also another cool feature which is called a filter. We can also filter out votes that have, let's say, less than, so there's even a histogram. So let's say you only show the ones that have at least 10 votes total or something like that. Right? And then if you apply filter, then it actually makes them grays them out. You can still kind of see them here, right? But it grays them out. But if I say dismiss, then it actually removes them from the visualization. And then I only have like the remaining ones in. Perhaps making it 4 times probably a little bit too much. So let's make it twice. So the 4 is a pretty big jump, right? So it gets definitely fat, the arrows as such. So if you make it twice as big, then it's probably okay.
Yeah.
And now you can actually see in the visualization, similar to Anders' tweet here, that the width of the relationships basically corresponds to the volume of votes that these countries got. Right? And what you could also do is, if you wanted to, we could also set the property on the node. So if we look at the 2022 votes, this one, or let me look at not the from, but the that's it here. So this is our from to, and we say votes 2022, right? And we take our to node and sum up all the numbers. Then we can actually set this property on the target node, right? So we can say votes 2022 equals total. So we basically set the total votes of the node on as a property as such. So and what's nice now in Bloom is now we can actually use this as well. I think we might need to refresh the perspective, but because it's a new property. But now we can go to nodes and say rule-based styling votes 2022, and we want to do a range and apply the size. And then you see already that they're getting smaller and bigger based on their votes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this
and
is
then
helpful.
The really tiny one of these really tiny ones that has no name anymore is Germany, of course. Because we got no votes, no one. But you also see that like Ukraine first, then UK, and then I think Sweden or Spain was the third.
Spain, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they were close.
So that's something that and then it already looks almost like Anders. You can also, there's also a trick, by the way. Emoji. Let me grab this one. So in Bloom, you can actually, let me see. So in Arrow, you can paste emojis at least, or images, which is really nice. But in Bloom, you can actually probably even select this as an icon as such. But it's the same for every, for every node. So it would be nice if I could just render the countries as well with their flag. It would be kind of cool. So that's something that we need to
maybe I don't know if that's possible as a hack, if the name of the node name contains Unicode emoji
yeah,
value.
so we can, let me see if we can edit node and just add it here.
Yeah.
And then say finish editing and close, and then
you
see the country. So we could also replace or have a second field that's called flag, and then
exactly
just render the flag.
Yeah,
that, right? So
that's probably exactly.
So you just the only thing that you have to get is kind of the Unicode codes for all the countries, basically. Cool. So that's kind of a quick exploration of this. The other thing that we could do is kind of look at a different bit of the model as well, right? So we probably won't get into like importing it into this model. But what else could we have, right? So we could say, actually, we could add a node for the contest, right?
Yeah.
Contest. And this would have as a property the year, for instance, 2022, and for instance, the city also, right? It was in Turin, right? So, and then basically countries submit a song or submission, let's say submit a song to this contest, right? And then the song has an artist, one or more artists, basically, right? So we can probably say performs, this artist performs the song, or these artists perform the song.
Yeah.
And the country, what it's called, what's it called, like submitted or like delegated, or what, like they sent them, right? So And so let's say submitted, right? And then this song participates in this contest or so, or participate. Can also edit it here, by the way, right? So no need to do it. So the song participates in the contest, and then actually the other country basically votes for the song, right? Or each country votes for the
yes,
song as such, right?
song, yeah.
And here we can actually say these are the votes for the jury, and or we can put it actually both on the same relationship actually, right? So we can say
Yeah, like we did before.
Again jury
total and public,
and public and total basically, right?
Yeah.
Right. And this is kind of our model that we use is kind of an aggregated model of this one. So it's basically just the in graph data science speak, it's the monopartite projection of the other model, right? So because after all, the country having submitted songs and country voting for songs is basically just a more detailed model. But then what you could also do is kind of look at other things, right? So basically countries voting, basically indirectly voting for artists, or if you have this song gets a style or something like that, right? So then you can say, okay, certain countries prefer certain styles or things like that, right? So there are more possibilities as well. So
or
that would be a
artists
proper
did participate in more than one.
Exactly, things like that, right? Could be also interesting. Would they get like VIP treatment bonus or something like that, right? Or not? So there are lots of other options, right? So that you could have with this data model, and that could be interesting to explore later. Where then you would take this kind of data source to add to. So you could also add what kind of language do they sing in, right? So personally, I kind of would love if they would kind of sing in their own country's language, because that's kind of more, local in a way, right? I mean, everyone sings in English, or like at least 70% of them sing in English, right? Which is kind of boring in a way, right? So I mean, Ukraine sang in Ukrainian, the Lithuanian singer did a chanson in her own language, and I think the Italian guys also sang in Italian.
French
so,
one, also. Yeah, the majority is English.
Were actually from the Bretagne, right? So they had actually not even French text, but Breton text. I really like that song. Actually, it was really RPG like. Kind of my kids said they're kind of summoning demons or something like that. And so that would be another data model. So we could actually then use data like this, or actually it's also in the JSON, so or in the JavaScript. So you could also extract this data from here as well, right? So then actually what's kind of interesting, then it would be almost a knowledge graph, right? So because it basically this takes the voting data from here, the song data from here. So you basically pull information from the different sources as well, right? So which could be also really interesting from that perspective. And so that could be
very interesting,
nice.
because I think there are a couple of these funny things with the ESC where artists participate for a couple of countries because they move around. Artists participating more than once with the same country, obviously, or in new formations, stuff like that. And then that could be interesting. Also language and
or much language here. It's multi-language songs and so on. What's they don't have the style of the song, so that's kind of that would be nice to have it as well. And what kind of music style is it?
So.
Cool. And because I have to leave on time today, I think we covered the things that I wanted to cover. So data is here. I'll update the CSV, and we should fix the one spelling mistake that I had in here, which is the code here. It should say name. Right.
Yeah, I put it all in the description of the video afterwards. And
and I'll try to write up a blog post this time again. So perhaps this week I have a little bit more time. Also, my work week is already pretty full again. But it would be nice to have a blog post with all the because then we can also include the videos and some fun ones. By the way, what I found interesting is so the Eurovision has all the videos online as well. You can actually download them even, which I found interesting. So they allowed downloads of the videos as well.
Okay.
And they have another one where actually all 40 submitted songs are in like a short, like 1 minute or 30 seconds playlist.
Mhm.
It's not a playlist, but it's like one video with like
Like a
all the
trailer.
songs,
I guess this was what they used for the
like a
voting
trailer. Yeah,
phases. Yeah.
and I found actually also the ones that didn't make it were actually quite nice as such, right? So it's a nice playlist of songs, of European songs as such, right? So from that perspective, it was quite good as
This was
such.
good.
And
Yeah.
they also have the semifinals online and so on. So there's also, if you can't get enough, then they're also like the semifinals are also online and you can watch them
It's
and be
if you got time, because it's quite a long
yeah.
session.
But I mean, if you just run it on the side, then
Yeah,
it's
that's
okay.
like good entertainment.
Yeah,
I'll
exactly.
I'll 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 do one thing. I'll play the winning song from
Yay,
YouTube as a outro kind of for today.
super.
Um,
Quite
and
jealous.
yeah, before I do that, before we basically wrap up or leave for today, I wanted to say thank you, Michael. Thank you for presenting today and for guiding us through. And I think this was a fun data set. It's very cool and it's good fun. So I was
Yeah,
excited and happy that we could take this on. I hope you all enjoyed this and had a good time as well. If you have any questions, obviously post it in the comments or chat with us in our community forum or on Discord. So there's always the path is always open there. We will be back next week. So in a week from now, next Monday, we will talk about data sets in AuraDB free again. Um, in the meantime, on Wednesday, we have another session on PHP. So our colleague Florent will dive into that. So if you're interested in PHP and Neo4j, tune in on Wednesday. Until then, I wish you all a good week. Stay safe, take care, and yeah, see you soon.
take care, everyone. Thank
Take
you.
care.
This was
Bye
fun.
bye.